Hello and welcome back to the Thomas Fitch Sports Show. I'm Thomas Fitch. We are going to be recapping the Texas 42-27 win on Saturday evening, afternoon, night. I don't know because it was such a long game, and we're going to get into that later. We'll be recapping that, which was kind of a disappointing game, and I'll say why I thought that was disappointing. We're also going to be talking some college football playoff. We're getting closer and closer to the final rankings, and a little bit of Texas men's basketball talk, who kicked off their season with an impressive 105-59 win on Friday night. So let's get started. All right, so we are going to start off with the Kansas game, and I was very frustrated with the game, and not just our play. And I'm going to talk, it's kind of related to the officiating. I don't like to actually talk about if I thought the officials made good calls or not. I like to stay objective, and I'd like the podcast to stay under like an hour or two. But what really frustrated me about this game was there is no reason this game should have taken 4 hours. The first half, there was more scoring, so I could see how it could have gone a little bit longer. But the second half, there was very little scoring. Texas scored twice, and one of them was at the end of the game. And Kansas there were two kind of just garbage time scores at the end of the game. But other than that, there were 2 scores in the second half. That should have been a 3.5 hour game. But, and this is not just unique to this game, this is all over the world of college football. And one complaint people have with why the games take so long, but it's because the officials review every single play that could be reviewed or could not even be reviewed. And the best example of that from the game on Saturday night, there was a play, I don't exactly remember what it was, basically reviewing if they should have, it was like if there was an illegal man downfield or if there should have been an offensive pass interference. They overruled the call that they had made on the field. So they ended up throwing the flag because it was a penalty, whatever the case was. And Kansas declined it. So basically, regardless of what they had called on the field, or of if they had overturned it or if they had kept the play, it was going to have no effect on the game. Yet they took up 5 minutes reviewing it, and that was one of many reviews, very pointless review. And they would review plays for 5-6 minutes and then just come back, there were plays that definitely should have been overturned, in my opinion. Although I'm going to try to stay objective, but plays that probably should have been overturned, they look at it for 5 or 6 minutes, don't overturn it, and there's just too many of them. And college football is such a great game, but it's getting ruined and it's getting too stretched out by all these reviews. They don't have NFL games are impressive. You will find very few NFL games that end in regulation that aren't in between 2 hours and 50 minutes and 3 hours and 10 minutes. There's not much variation. Same commercial time, same game time, same halftime amount of time. The only difference is that there's much more reviews and the clock stops on first down. So if you want to say that adds like 10 minutes, 15 minutes to the game, that's fine. That does not explain why these games are going 4 hours, and other than scoring. But there's just too many reviews. The refs need to trust their instincts, and a lot of these plays are fairly blatant on the field. And I don't know if the head of officials or whatever goes back and reviews the plays afterwards and says, oh, that was a good call, that was a bad call. Like, I know the NBA will release a statement like the last 2 minutes, which is dumb because, again, the officials they don't want to get called out for missing a call. But trust your gut on the field. And then they go back and then they review plays for way too long. And I don't know what it is. I do know when you look at the video board at the game, I don't know if that's the video feed that the officials are looking at, but it's terrible. You see like the play of the ball going like back and forth like 2 seconds. But anyways, that was frustrating. But let's move on to actual analysis. This game, it kind of felt like a loss. And obviously you're playing Kansas. In no situation should you feel slightly nervous when you're playing Kansas in the fourth quarter. But for a large part in the fourth quarter, we were only up by 15. That's very unacceptable against Kansas. A Kansas team who got who got destroyed by Baylor, who we destroyed. So again, logic of college football doesn't follow well, but still, this is the Kansas team last year that we lost to. Like they did suck, but they actually had some close games with other teams. Kansas hasn't been close with anybody. Well, they have one win against San Diego State for the blind, and that's the only win they have. So this is a game where it's unacceptable to be in a 2-touchdown, 2-possession game against them in the fourth quarter. And that was largely in part to the offense kind of stalling in the second half, but the defense didn't play well early on. So we'll start talking about offense. Finally, though, the offense started well. First play of the game, there was a touchdown. And I've been saying for a while, the problem is we've been starting so slow. We can't get scores early on, and then we're having to make comeback attempts in the second half. Well, we finally started off fast. As we did the math in the stands, Texas was on pace for 2,800 points because they had scored 7 points in about 9 seconds. Obviously, that didn't happen because we ended up with 42 points. But it was a good start, but then you get to the second half and everything just stagnated. Texas ended up scoring 14 points, but one of those touchdowns was in garbage time. So it was a tale of two halves where, and really not even two halves. It was the first quarter, Texas puts up 28, and then everything just went downhill from there. A large reason for that, this might not be the most popular opinion, but Shane clearly isn't the guy. He looks decent against bad teams. That's the thing about him. He is a average run of the mill quarterback who would be good if he had a good offensive line, good receive, a good team built around, kind of like a worse Kirk Cousins, like a short, not as clutch Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is like, you flip a coin, he's clutch one game, not clutch the other game. Shane just doesn't have what it takes to win big games. And I don't want anybody going back and saying, hey, look at what he did against Notre Dame last year. Because, yeah, he was impressive in that game. But, Swoops won that game for us. But, Shane looked good in that game. But that ended up being a very awful Notre Dame team. So I'd love to see Sam start in these next two games. I think we could still beat Tech with Shane, maybe, just because the defense is good and we have a lot of offensive weapons, especially in the receiving core. But Sam is he's better at winning. There are no stats, no sabermetrics to define why Sam is better than Buechele. He's just better at winning. He's better at being in close games. I said this after the TCU game. I don't know if we win with him, but we're at least in a closer game. We're in a close game against USC with him. San Jose State doesn't count, but he played decent. Close game with USC, close game with Oklahoma, close game with Oklahoma State. The common denominator, he's playing. Now you go, and Kansas State. So now, Shane starts against TCU. Doesn't. I mean, it wasn't like he was awful, but there was nothing impressive, and we scored 7 points. Now against Kansas, nothing impressive. It was 22 of 32, 249 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, but nothing to write home about. And so going forward in the future, and fortunately there's only 2 games left, and I think a large reason why Ehlinger wasn't playing this game was because he's recovering, he's had concussions and all sorts of stuff, and his health worries me too. Buechele's health worries me a lot, even more. So I get why he's not playing this game, but going forward, Ehlinger needs to be the quarterback. That's just my take on that. And I mean, if you want to get into like actual lining up, like what are they better? Shane definitely is a better accurate passer most of the time, but he's indecisive and he can't see over the offensive line. Whereas you go to Sam, much better pocket presence, which you have to have when you have no offensive line. And he just has the clutch gene. And it's not a measurable stat. That's just something that It's just something that it's just there. It's either there or not. It's not something you can have half a clutch gene. Shane doesn't have it. Sam does. So um, that's that. We struggled to get the running game going largely. Daniel Young had 21 carries for 67 yards. Carter actually had a decent. Well, he only had 3 carries, but 34 yards. Porter 5 for 8. Warren 1 for 1. Some of it's just hard when you have no offensive line to really get stuff going, and so that's just something that in the future we're not going to be able to have. Um, I don't mind running the ball, and I think especially against Tech, who has a bad defense, you have to run the ball at some point. You cannot go through a game without running the ball just because you can't be a one-dimensional offense, but it's hard to really get the game going when really get that running game going when you're just so depleted on the offensive line. However, there is a chance, I don't know, I haven't heard anything, but there's a chance that Connor Williams could be back for the last 2 games of the year. So if that happens, I think we'll see a big spike in running game production. Play calling last little bit about the offense. The play calling, I'll say this about Tim Beck. It was better. Obviously, the first half was good offensive play calling. You scored 28 points, even though one of those was a pick 6 and the other one was an interception that gave you the ball in the 10, or the 9. Regardless, it looked better. The thing that frustrated me the most, the first touchdown, first play of the game, was a really long pass to. Now I'm blanking on who it was. I believe it was Lorenzo Joe. Yeah, 49-yard reception from Buechele. It was a great pass. He just drops it right in Joe's hands as he goes in the end zone. But we went to that one more time, and it was a questionable, remember, objective journalism right here, questionable call in the end zone to Colin Johnson. But so there's 2 shots. And that's just, I don't know, that's Shane's strong suit. Why aren't you attacking that? That was clearly the way to go with that game. I don't know why we left that. A couple too many screen passes, but I also get your play calling gets depleted when you can't run the ball well and you don't have a lot of time in the pocket. So I get that. Let's move to the defense. The defense kind of was the exact opposite of the offense. They started off slow. They gave up just not a good first half. 17 points. Giving up that much to Kansas is not a good start. And what I think personally, one reason for that, Kansas did fairly well attacking us over the air. They only had 96 rushing yards, but their quarterback Stanley was 27 of 43, 268 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And so when you look at that, that's not bad as far as on their side. I think my hypothesis is not really a hypothesis. This is why they attacked us well there. Is you lose Holton Hill, who was suspended for no official reason has been put out, but he's suspended for the year, and just losing him, he is such a threat. Just because he's good in pass coverage, he's such a good open field tackler. One way they really exposed us defensively was those little screen passes where you get it to the guy and you have the other wide receiver blocking your cornerback. And Hill is so good at getting off of that and making the tackle in the backfield. And you lose that, and they did a really good job of exploiting that issue with us. And so, and not only that, now this is, it's always scary when Chris Boyd becomes the best option or your second best cornerback on the field. That's never something you want to do. Boyd also had a lot of blown coverages. He had a fumble on a kick return. He got benched after that, which was good. Anyways, we're running out of time on this first podcast. We will be back in just 1 minute. All right, we are back with part two of the Thomas Fitch Sports Show. We are still on the Texas-Kansas game from Saturday evening, night, afternoon, morning, and dawn and dusk. Um, so the thing that our defense did well, other than limiting Kansas to really 3 points, they scored a touchdown in garbage time, but really 3 points in the second half, 10 points total. But they did a good job of forcing turnovers. There were 3 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery, so four turnovers in total. But what impressed me, and this has impressed me the whole year, is the ability of our team when the other team gets to the red zone or in field goal range to shut them down there and either force a turnover or force the team to a field goal. And that's one way that our defense has been really successful is being able to bend and not break and either hold the team, hold them to a field goal, or have an interception. Antoine Davis, I want to talk about him in a short second, but Davis had a really good interception in the end zone towards the end of the first half. And it's that kind of stuff that's elite stuff. The best defenses, they're not just stopping you every time on 3 and out. The best defenses know when they need to buckle down and get a stop and to force turnovers. And so that was impressive. The other cool thing about the turnovers, they were all by senior backups. Jason Hall had the interception, also had a big sack. It's cool to see him getting in here. He's lost his starting role to some of the young guns like Deshaun Elliott and Brandon Jones. But he got in there. He had a big sack. He had 6 total tackles, 5 solo, a sack, and an interception. And Antoine Davis, this is a really cool story. So he was coming in to back up Holton Hill. He ended up with 2 interceptions in the game, but he's a senior, and he had to work hard in the spring semester so that he could graduate and get eligibility for one more season. He had, Herman said this in the press conference after the game, but he had to get a lot of credits done, and Herman said he worked really hard to be able to graduate and play this year. And it's cool just to see that he was able to come in the game, get this opportunity, step up, had 2 big interceptions, had a pick 6, and an interception in the end zone. So, that's one of those cool stories. Just cool to see of Davis. He ended up with 3 total tackles, but his influence was really felt in the turnover game. Before we go on to the college football playoff, we have our little Michael Dixon spotlight. First of all, I want to shout out Nate Boyer. If anybody knows his Twitter handle or Instagram, tag him in this, all my valued listeners, because he's been watching my show, allegedly, because he went on Longhorn game day before the game and said Michael Dixon should be in the conversation for the Heisman. Now, y'all who have been listening to my show, y'all know I've been saying that for over a month. So clearly Nate Boyer is one of my valued 7 listeners to the show, and he was like, this Thomas Fitch guy, he has these stats. He must have heard my stat when I said that Dixon was averaging 48.5 more yards per punt than Saquon Barkley is. And, update, because now Baker Mayfield has the best Vegas odds. Believe it or not, this is crazy. This is going to blow y'all's mind. But stat of the year, Michael Dixon, it's the exact same stat as for comparing his punting yards per game to Saquon Barkley's. It works the same way with Baker Mayfield. Both times he's averaging over 48.5 more yards per punt than both candidates. So, just something to throw in the Heisman ring. And in all seriousness, like I am actually being serious, other than Baker Mayfield, who, I'll give him the credit. I hate to give him credit, but he's having a good year. Other than him, Saquon Barkley is dropping off. His team's dropping off. Bryce Love's been injured. Notre Dame lost, so they're running backs out of the conversation for the most part. Who else are you going to not necessarily give it to, but who else are you going to take to New York? That'd be a really cool story to get a punter in the Heisman and get him second or third place. But but he didn't punt much. He had 4 punts for 186 yards, which is 46.5 yards per punt. Had a good punt that he pinned inside or at the 1. But again, it's frustrating me when they're having him punt from the 39-yard line. Like they did that. Like, are you trying to, like Tom Herman, are you trying to keep this guy from winning the Heisman? Like, I know you don't like the kicking game, but the punting game's good. I don't know. So that was Michael Dixon for Heisman. I'm his campaign manager, allegedly, unofficially. Anyways, college football playoff. We're getting closer and closer. Only got 2 weeks left of the season before we get to the championship games. Anyways, there's a bunch. So Miami beat Notre Dame. That was kind of the biggest. Well, that and Auburn killed Georgia. Those were the 2 biggest upsets. So real quick, here is my top 6. I'll just give them to you and then break it down. Number 1, Alabama. Number 2, Miami. Number 3, 3 and 4, I'm kind of going back and forth against, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But 3, Oklahoma. 4, Clemson. 5, Wisconsin. 6, Georgia. So why are Bama and Miami up there at 1 and 2? When you're ranking these teams, you have to value being undefeated. And being undefeated in a Power 5 conference and having wins against ranked teams. And when you're not playing teams, beating them in a good fashion. Why Wisconsin isn't in there is because Iowa's the first ranked team that they've beaten. And, Iowa's been in the top 25 for 1 week. Bama had a good win against Mississippi State on the road. Miami, incredible win. They just destroyed Notre Dame. And those again, because this is clearly, it's a good Notre Dame team. And when you can defeat them, you put up 40 points on the number 3 ranked team in the nation. That shows me that you might be legit. OU, I have them jumping ahead of Clemson. Clemson remains stationary in my rankings. The reason I did that is, again, OU big win over TCU. So big wins over a ranked team. That's how I have that. And then Clemson won, so nothing to write home about in their game. And I had Georgia 6 versus Auburn. The reason that I have Georgia ahead of Auburn, even though Auburn beat them big, and really it could go either way. Again, the 6-7 spot doesn't matter, But Georgia is going to be in the SEC championship game. If they win out and they win the SEC championship with 1 loss, they're in. So that's why I have them against Auburn. Auburn, because they have 2 losses, that hurts them a little bit. But again, Auburn still controls their own destiny. If they win out and they win the SEC championship, they're in too. But Auburn couldn't lose to Georgia in the SEC championship if they've already beaten Alabama with 3 losses and make it up. So that's kind of why I have Georgia there. But that could go really either way. So, people get really upset about this, about who you have where. Oh, you have Miami too. They're over. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. These things, Miami still has to play Clemson in the ACC title game. Bama still has to play Auburn. And either Bama or Auburn will play Georgia in the SEC championship game. Oklahoma still has to win the Big 12. Clemson, Wisconsin still has to beat Ohio State. So things are going to sort themselves out. And honestly, I think of all years, this might be the year where there's the least argument for 18 playoff. And I'm a big proponent. I really want the 18 playoff to happen. But I think this year, I think the stage is set to where we could have a top 4 that few disagree with. And I think barring any major upsets from a non-ranked team against a ranked team, which is college football, that's gonna happen. One of these top, I'm just gonna say one of these top 6, and we'll add Auburn and Ohio State as 7 and 8. One or two of those teams will be upset by a non-ranked team, likely in the next couple weeks, especially when you have rivalry week coming up. So, it's college football. Anyways, before we get to the end of the show, I'll talk a little bit about basketball. But what I'm going to do is I went and covered the game for Texas Student Television, TSTV, on Friday. And so I made a package for that. And so Again, this is a video show on YouTube, so if you want to see that, for you listening on podcast, you won't be able to listen to that or to see that. However, if you want to, just go on YouTube, look up Thomas Fitch. It'll just be Texas versus Kansas recap, and at the end of the video, you can watch that. But it was a really good win, 105-59, and this is going to be one of the best Texas teams we've ever seen. Just because they're and Northwestern, again, it's Northwestern State, but almost a 60-point victory is impressive nonetheless. And they played with so much chemistry. You have 11 guys getting significant minutes, 7 guys in the double digits, and scoring. These guys are just playing as a unit. And it was hyped as the Mo Bamba show, and he did lead the team with 15 points and added 8 rebounds and 4 blocks. But everybody on this team, everybody in the starting lineup and really on the second string is a threat. And so, this could be the year where we could beat Kansas at home. Unfortunately, that game's over Christmas break, but I think that would be a fun game to go and rush the court. Maybe. And not just beat them, but maybe win the Big 12, be a top 3 seed. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just saying this is where I think the ceiling is. Because as Michael Jordan once said, the ceiling is the roof. Sorry, joke. But in all seriousness, this is a team who really has the potential to be a top 15 team and make a good run at the championship. Again, ceiling, barring injuries, barring this game being a fluke in a Notre Dame game from last year. But I do think that is a possibility that we could see. Anyways, I'll have the package on the YouTube video, so check that out. Mo Bamba and the Texas Longhorns basketball team kicked off the season at home on Friday night against Northwestern State, and they started off fast.
We're coming out and our message is we have something to prove. Last year wasn't the greatest year for us, and I'm saying us because I was a part of that too.
Prove something they did. The Horns put up 62 points in the first half, led by Andrew Jones's 12.
It felt great, that's the style of play we've been wanting to play for and we've been building to play for. And, it showed tonight and there's only more to come.
It was certainly a dunk fest for Texas, who also did a good job of spreading the ball around. 7 Longhorns finished in double figures.
Depth can be a really good advantage for us. It could be a positive if we have some guys that are willing to play roles and come in the game and play their butts off in terms of effort, knowing that, we got other guys coming in for them.
Smart is coming off a poor 11-22 record last season. However, his coaching Friday night was praised by Northwestern State coach Mike McConaughey.
The length of Texas today and the athleticism running was in the top 5 that I've ever faced against. After an exhibition tour in Australia, preseason practice and scrimmages in Austin and Houston, newcomers Mo Bamba and Dylan Oskakowski took the court for the first time tonight at the Frank Irwin Center.
I thought Mo and Dylan as a twosome really just gave us a great spark early with the way that they played, the way they rebounded.
Was this everything you thought it would be tonight?
Everything and more. I was just so happy to get back out there and enjoy the experience. Obviously, winning was a big factor in that, but it was good to get back out there.
Not only did the Horns dominate, but they also had fun while doing it.
We all genuinely love and care about each other, and when you get out there, you can see that in our faces and how we kind of conduct out there.
We're having a lot of fun. You want to have fun playing basketball. Obviously, it's fun when you're up by a lot.
The Longhorns will return to the court Tuesday night against New Hampshire at 7 p.m. here in the Frank Irwin Center. From TSTV, I'm Thomas Fitch. That is going to end our show today. Our next show will be likely next Monday before Thanksgiving break, recapping Texas's game. They travel on the road to Morgantown. That game will be 11 o'clock Central Time on Saturday. Anyways, thank you for joining me on this Monday afternoon. From the Thomas Fitch Sports Show, I'm Thomas Fitch. Let go of everything.